Welcome. I am Amy Loudermilk, the program manager for Arts Build, whose mission is to create community through the arts. I am here today with Miss Monica Kinsey of Arts Forward, and Arts Forward and Arts Build welcome you. This partnership has brought us the opportunity to speak with our local candidates, our mayoral candidates. And so today, Miss Monica is going to lead us off and introduce our moderator and our candidate. So Monica, I hand it off to you.
Thank you, Amy. Like Amy said, I am Monica Kinsey with Arts Forward Chattanooga, and we are a collective of 18 arts organizations. We work alongside Arts Build on providing shared resources such as HR, legal, marketing, awareness of the arts and the community, as well as advocacy in the arts. The arts contribute over $172 million to our local economy, and we feel that it's important that our arts community is engaged in their local elections. Simply put, artists create, contribute, and they vote. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest mayoral candidate today, Mr. Robert C. Wilson, and our moderator, Josiah Golson, who is a local artist. He is a part of Rise Chattanooga and a part of the Chattanooga Racial Equity Collective. Josiah, if I left anything off, please feel free to share more. I'll let each of our guests share a little more about themselves and their organizations as we kick this off, and we will start with Josiah.
Thank you, Monica. It's wonderful that this is happening, and that the city and our community and our candidates for the office of mayor are being so intentional about thinking about how what role government might play in continuing to foster our culture and to serve our artists, and how artists can be civically engaged. In addition to the wonderful programs that Monica listed, part of my work as an artist is running a program called 800 Collective, which basically just uses art as a means of civic engagement and dialogue. And so without further ado, I welcome and gladly introduce the candidate we're speaking to today, Mr. Robert C. Wilson. Robert, I would love to, as a way of you introducing yourself and talking about yourself and your platform, if you will, tell us, in addition to your background and your passion and interest in that's led you to running for mayor, what role do the arts play in your own life? And that can be as broad as like thinking about how they inspired you coming of age and growing up, to what it means on a day-to-day level for you.
Well, thank you for having me today. My name's Robert Wilson, and I'm running for mayor because I think that I'm a natural born leader. I'm a people person, and I like to solve problems head on. I've got 25 plus years here in the automobile business in Chattanooga, and then 5 years I've been in the real estate business. I think, art, as a child, I was very interested in art, and my parents, back in the World Book Encyclopedia days, I wish I've got the book somewhere in storage, but it was a big blue book of arts. And my parents, at that time, it was some serious money. I think they laid down $35 or $40 for me to have this book. And it was also different that the resources weren't available. So many things in that book that I struggled with, I was never able to do, art with nails and welding them together. But I've always been interested in art. I was fortunate that Jean-Claude showed me through the Louvre in Paris. So that was quite an understanding. In the automobile business at the BMW store, I sat in the big chair for a number of years, and I wrote some big checks to AVA and other arts opportunities here in town. So I was involved. If anybody knows Joe Bush and Cam Bush here in Chattanooga, and I know you do, that Cam used to have this art tour, or well, anyway, I got to visit it every year as part of the leadership team at the BMW store, and purchased art in that, certainly to support Cam. And, art, I think, is such an important thing. And in preparing for this, like anything, you've got to study and read. So I'm going to read something here that I stole, but I found it to be pretty good. And it says, art gives meaning to sadness. It was everything that you could take something so sublime as art and get a moment of heartbreak and hardship, and then channel it into something that makes someone else feel less alone. Art, the ability to make it, gives meaning to your sadness in ways not many are able to express it or experience it. And then it went on to say that there's no straight path in life or in art, so that I look at it and I'm able to experience one thing and someone else can look at it and experience another. So I'm totally versed that art is so important, definitely in the younger age groups, and no disrespect for real artists that are able to produce products that sell. But one thing, when I was at the BMW store and writing those checks, I mean, you think about what you're doing, you're giving substantial sums of money that are not easily earned or investing them, but not to show any disrespect, but used cars are similar to that. And most people that are in the car business know the dealers make their money off the used cars. And here's what I mean. The other day, I ran across a 2004 SL Mercedes 500 with 50,000 miles on it. I looked at the car. It's of no interest to me. You could buy it for 15,000, but I wouldn't give $2 for it. But that doesn't mean that next person doesn't come along and say that, and say, man, this is exactly what I'm looking for. They pay the big money, but 5 years from now, it becomes a collector's item, and now it's worth 30 or 40. So I think the value of things, as the old saying goes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I'm excited to be able to be part of this, and I will work with the ability that the mayor's office has to bring to the table to encourage and promote. And I'm well aware of the economic impact that it brings to the city.
Wow. Thank you, Robert. And that was quite a powerful quote. Over the course of the next 35 minutes, I'll just be asking you questions from Chattanooga residents and folks in the community, and of course creatives and voters who will be making the decision in March. And I think the quote that you shared and what you spoke to in your personal experience actually introduces this next question perfectly. That being, what arts and culture activities have been sustaining you during the pandemic, which is, I think we all would recognize, has been quite a painful time for all of us to deal with in various ways.
Well, I think that my exposure, working for BMW was very fortunate, because their take is that they bring their product to market 80% perfected. It's not perfect, but the only way they could be forward thinking is to bring their products out like that. So I've learned so much from that style of thinking to say that I'm very trainable, and I've encouraged my people to always be trainable. So one thing that I would say that sustained me, and I've shared with others, and this was a quote from Nelson Mandela. They asked him, how did you survive all those years in jail? And he said that I sustained myself on the work of others. So I think that that's, whether you're listening to music or you're looking at art or you're reading, all those things you're sustaining yourself on the work of others. So I've encouraged my family to do that during this time and focused on it on myself. And just saying that I've tried to learn from everybody and everything as I go along. So.
All right, absolutely. Like you spoke about the need for forward thinking in the business experience that you've had, and I think that's a great opportunity to think about innovation. And one of the questions that we have here asks about what ideas you might have to innovatively support and fund the arts in Chattanooga, and what that might look like.
Well, that's a tough question. I probably would have needed time to think that through. I think I've spent a year for sure, in the last 6 months in particular, really focused on studying what my platform would be and what would I do once I got in office, I will say that arts probably was not on that radar screen yet, other than knowing that, I'll support it as I can. It's probably not. Sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you for the transparency. That's absolutely important. So let's take a step back. When you think about local government and whether or not it should play a role in arts and culture, and if so, assuming it is, this is kind of a two-part question. Does local government play a role in arts and culture, or should it? And what does that role to you look like?
Well, I think absolutely, I'm sometimes disadvantaged as being a businessman, because you've really got to constantly do the math as where does it all work out and where does it spit out a profitable end result. And there's no doubt that art does that in ways that we don't fully understand because of the individual reaction to art, how it makes us feel and how it makes us grow and think. So I would say that you will find me providing within the scope of the mayor's office the broadest spectrum of opportunity for all citizens, and that would absolutely include artists.
Sure. Do you think when it comes to other sectors that as mayor you would require your focus and attention, say like education? Do you think that the arts can be instrumental in helping in education, like helping improve our test scores and increasing the performance of our students in science and math? And if you see potential for that, what might that look like?
Well, I think earlier, and I shared, and no disrespect to anyone, but definitely in early education, the kids now more than ever need some sort of outlet to just be creative. And art certainly provides them with that opportunity. I'm not really sure how the arts is being, handled in the schools right now, but we were fortunate. We had art class, so we had that time to be able to just, to do, be messy or do what you want to do. So absolutely, there's a time for structure. And there's a time just to be able to be creative and to kind of do your own thing. And I think art definitely brings that to the table for children. So it would just, help create more well-rounded individuals,
Heard. Thank you. And this next question, I think you've already hinted at it quite a bit when you spoke to us needing the understanding of having an appreciation for the importance of arts and culture and also like the value that it brings and the wealth that it brings to our city. But you spoke to the fact that there are ways we're not fully aware of the value that it brings, or not really fully tapping into how much we can value the arts and value creatives and really utilize that. So I think this next question is an opportunity to expound on that. If you were elected mayor, what would a priority look like that would make sure our community understands the benefits from the role arts play in bringing Chattanoogans together, and then also bringing a diverse community of Chattanoogans together?
Well, I think that the initial job of the next mayor is going to be quite the balancing act. We know that over the last year, that half of the revenues for the city come from sales tax. The sales tax was cut by half. So there's going to be a big strain on resources, going forward. So I think that my experience, because in 2008, I was sitting at the desk of a multi-million-dollar operation, and we really had to make some tough decisions. But those decisions came about by uniting all the people together to work toward a common goal. So, I think the first year or two, certainly there's going to be some belt tightening and some streamlining and some search for efficiencies that have to be done. And that will have to be balanced. And you guys are helping bring awareness to me that it has to be balanced also, with art. I also know that our city is quite a unique place in that we have, beautiful mountains and rivers and streams and such a great outdoor opportunities, but yet also we have a great art community that is dedicated to, doing these things and answering these questions that you're talking about. So it would take some more research, and I know there's people already in place that have the knowledge and wisdom. And, I'm the kind of guy who has been fortunate to, to be in charge of big operations, but it's only done by administration. And I mean that there are people that are in place that, that have to be listened to and their visions included. So we certainly would listen to everyone and provide, again, the broadest spectrum of opportunity for everyone. Indeed.
That sounds good. When we think about especially the value that arts bring to through tourism and through means that are more direct as far as like the financial gains where you can see how that happens. Chattanooga has a burgeoning music art scene, specifically with these really dynamic, unique venues that are also in these great locations. And so what role do you think the city, as far as local government, can play in helping Chattanooga enhance its role as a potential great music city? And I realize that's also, we're taking a look at this question in the midst of a pandemic that's kind of shut this thing down on a global scale. But going forward, what do you think the vision would look like to enhance Chattanooga's role in music venues and maximizing those opportunities?
Well, I think there would be two, schools of thought on that. Is it easier to build and develop something like that? Or is it easier to maintain it and grow it? And I say that it's harder to maintain it and grow it. We are fortunate that we have had some really brilliant people, and they're all still there. We've got 3,000 city employees, and there's some very smart, talented people in place. So, this platform has been built, and that's really easier to do. But going forward, to maintain it and then to encourage it to grow, it'll take some serious effort. I've been in both places in my career. I was fortunate to end up with a disaster, and all you can do is go up from there. But then also I've been handed successful organizations and the leaders say, make it better. Now that is tough. And that requires a group of people working together for a common goal. And, I'll be very inclusive in my administration and put people in place that represent that diversity.
Heard. That's you speak to a very critical point of maintaining it and seeing it, realizing on a long-term sustainable level. And you've already spoken a bit to this next question and what like your team could look like. Going a little further, what are ways or how might you engage the local arts community and local promoters and people in those practices to activate our city-owned venues and riverfront as opposed to out-of-town entities? Like, how do we keep that talent and those resources and dollars in the city in Chattanooga?
Well, I think the next administration has to put a real focus on the vision that has never really been created in the downtown area. It's a beautiful, wonderful place, but we've seen multiple restaurants come and go. We've had a Sugar's Ribs down there that can couldn't survive. We had Applebee's, a full-on, I guess it's Applebee's or one of those restaurants, standing vacant there. So creating that environment downtown where people really want to go down there will be a big part of an opportunity like you're talking about. We know, well, I mean, it's been a ghost town down there now for months, so there's plenty of parking. But when the thing was humming, there was just parking problems everywhere. So I've actually got a team of people analyzing other cities on how they've handled it. I'm not going to bring that out yet. Let the other candidates do their research. But creating parking and creating flow of traffic down there where it's easy to get in and out. And there's some other big capital projects that have been planned and shelved only to spend the money in other places. So I think that I will work to create that walking community that we envision. And another thing too, it doesn't just have to be downtown. I mean, why can't we have a place in East Chattanooga created for those type of venues, or one over here in East Brainerd? I live kind of at the edge of Brainerd, East Brainerd. So it's always like everything's got to happen downtown. Is it the only green space in town? I don't think so. So we will work toward creating an opportunity to spread those venues out and also provide more parking downtown and a more friendly walking atmosphere down there. I mean, it's a wonderful vision, and they have done great jobs and infrastructure to get to that, but it just hadn't been realized yet, and maybe it just wasn't the time.
All right. And I'm glad you spoke to, I think people will be glad to hear you speak about Chattanooga at large as far as its potential for culture and for this beauty and activation to happen throughout the city, not only just be focused on one space or one district. To that point, one of our questions asks, what might be your suggestions for engaging our community through arts, culture, and also equitable development?
Would you repeat that? I got lost in my thoughts there.
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. I know the wheels are turning. What might be your suggestions on how we engage our community through arts, culture, and equitable development?
Wow, man, that's a tough one there. I don't know that I could just absolutely. We want to be able to think on our feet, but that's a tough question. I guess the city would have to invest in that kind of thinking in a way.
All right. And to that point, someone's question also brings up the concern of displacement that comes about from development and the effects of gentrification, and specifically how it's affecting communities of color, including the Black community, and the irony that occurs when there's a lot of exciting arts and culture that are happening in these communities, but yet the attention and the investment that follows that ultimately doesn't support the same communities that in ways attracted the value. As mayor, how would you try to address this issue and engage this, and also in thinking of terms of what that looks like for how you support arts and culture programming?
Well, I think that a lot of the popular political talking points are about affordable housing, but we're sitting at a point today where building materials are up over 200% from just a short time ago. So, to talk about affordable housing is probably just talking about rental properties. Mm-hmm. So I think that to continue to offer free housing is only robbing people of the American dream. How are you ever going to own your own home if you're just consistently promised free housing? So I think you'll find my administration focused on creating jobs. I was fortunate to have traveled the world, and I think that I will spend most of my time and a lot of that experience showcasing our attributes to potential industries that we can get to move here. And one of my main platform things, I didn't go into it, but my first job out of high school, I served an apprenticeship in the local 43 plumbers and steam fitters. So I'm a product of vocational training. So my goal is to create a vocational training center focused at high school juniors and seniors and give them marketable skills that they can actually use right out of high school and go get a good paying job. And that solves pretty much everything. If you can go earn a living, you can live anywhere you want to in this city. I know we hear about the median prices being higher than some other places, but the report that I read that was put out, they zeroed in on last August. I mean, it was, for whatever reason, the highest it was at 243 was the median price, but I think the average for the year was about 200. So, there's no doubt there's some problems there, but jobs is what it's got to be about. And administration has got to focus on removing red tape and regulations and promoting industries here in Chattanooga. And then that in itself will, create opportunities for the arts to thrive, as well as small businesses, as well as the inner city neighborhoods. I'm a product of the inner city neighborhoods. I grew up in East Chattanooga. I went to Dalewood. I went to Avondale Elementary, so you will find me investing in those communities, and I already have. I've got rental properties in East Chattanooga, just a little small portfolio, but I could have bought rental properties in East Brainerd, but I grew up there, so I really am invested, and I really do care about the communities. And you'll see me working to bring jobs and opportunities to all of us.
I appreciate the focus you gave in that answer, also to education and vocational training. And when we think about young people and their access to such resources, I think this other question helps complement that a bit. They ask how the arts might have a stronger presence within recreation centers, like in the spaces where students are then outside when they're not in school. How do you see the arts possibly being used in those ways to support, sustain, enrich young people with a promising future?
Well, I actually would say I grew up in the East Chattanooga Community Center. We came from the generation is you better be home before the streetlights come on, but outside of that, we were gone all day, so there was actually things going on down there. Miss Reevely, so if anybody that was back in those days, they were, they got out clay, they let us play with it, they let us, draw and chalk and things like that. So it was part of, that when I was a kid. Now, we at some point moved up into Harrison, and were, I always kind of, was saddened that my kids didn't get that community, although they had, they went to the good schools and there was plenty of opportunity for them. But, thinking that through, absolutely, it was part of my life growing up, and that I hope that's still going on in those community centers today, that there's art programs there and that there are dedicated people there that are overseeing it.
Heard.
Because we had a guy named Jeff Hester, man, he was a scary dude. You didn't mess up at the community center. So it's got to be supervised, and,
Heard.
I would work to see and hope that's going on, and work to increase that if I possibly could.
Understood. This is an interesting question. This is about like seeing the role of artists in Chattanooga, not only making art, but being a part of like addressing the issues that that usually concern specialists in local government. The question reads, Chattanooga is known for its arts community. Artists are problem solvers. Would you be open to engage artists in complex problem solving, such as juvenile delinquency, homelessness, crime, including violent crimes? If so, can you explain?
Well, I will say that I haven't brought this up because I don't know exactly how you bring it up, maybe till elected, but part of what I plan to do is to set my own voluntary board of directors that meet with me only. These will be people picked from the community. I've kind of got a skeleton of what I want that to look like, so that it's a very diverse group, and so that as the ideals come to me, I can run it through this filter and then come out the other end with what I feel like we need to do. And then certainly you got to go to the city council and get them committed to the process too. So, you know, one of those seats on the board should be from this arts community. You know, when you start trying to sit down and pick out 12 diverse different people, it's not as easy as you might think to say, hey, I'm going to get 12 people, but then to find 12 people willing to volunteer. So I've got a few people agreed to, from an immigrant to MBA. There's some people interested, and I'm trying to make sure they don't look like me. You know what I mean? So we won't, so we'll have to, you guys will have to appoint that person, and we'll put them on that board, and they will be there to hear every decision.
Heard. When the next question is also I think it builds on these on kind of the discussion we've been having about that you've been guiding about the importance of engaging the community, the importance of engaging resources like development centers and how those are accessed for generations of young people, including your own generation, and what they can do going forward, specifically in the context of arts engagement. Someone asks, if you are elected mayor, will you support the Mayor's Council on Disability in efforts to facilitate inclusion and awareness through engagement within city hall departments and the disabled citizens?
Well, I will say that as an outsider, it's harder to get your arms around what's really going on. And it seems like that I see that commission and board after commission and board, their recommendations are always another commission and board and another executive level position. So I would have to say, I don't know exactly where that group would stack up in all those, but I will say that that I will focus for the first year for sure, because of the requirements that the budget are going to bring, on streamlining some of that stuff down to the most important. And I can't understand how that would not be one of the most important things. I mean, you know, we're focused on, I think all of us in this time, and one of my clients, he crashed a van that he ended up somehow in the top balcony of the place he wrecked into. So he was really disabled, you know, but we were able to sell him a car, but I got to know him. Well, he was involved in, he was an attorney, so he was involved in a lot of the things we see today as law. So, you know, and that happened a long time ago, that my association with him, and he explained things that I might used to think, hey, you know, whatever, why do we need a handicap sidewalk? But as I've grown and learned that everybody has to have the same opportunity. And I think that the mayor's job is to bring consensus together. You know, let's all pull together, and what is the majority of the people, and hopefully a super majority of the people, if we can get everybody on the same page. There's no, you know, together we'll make Chattanooga better than it's ever been.
All right. All right. We have a few questions concerning budget for outcomes. I'll try to condense them so it's just like one question. Basically the question is about what your thoughts are about the current budget for outcomes process, and whether you have any thoughts about changes or restructuring to it that could make funds more attainable for the nonprofits and arts orgs serving the community.
Well, I would share at this point that I worked for a Fortune 200 company for a number of years. Was my last go round, and we operated with a pretty sophisticated financial statement. But that financial statement expounded into 1,000 lines of information. And I had at some point carried a piece of paper in my pocket, and with about 4 or 5 lines, I could predict what was going to spit out the end of that other one down the line there. So I will say that the budget vision that I've been able to see right now, as an outsider, I guess I could, you know, maybe sue the city, but, and also, you know, for providing me documents, but we're also dealing in a COVID time, so that's caused me some problems. I can't just easily go to City Hall and sit down with some of these people, and really go over. So I will say that at some point, I will absolutely understand every line in the budget. And I think it's like, we used to kid about this, and it's art, but at some point, running a automobile dealership is like picking a guitar. You better learn which strings make the pretty music. And those budgets are like that too. You've really got to know where that money has to be and where it is the most impact is going to come from. So I've got a steep learning curve going in, I know, but in the, I will be surrounded with great counselors. There's 3,000 city employees already there that have the resources and the experience to work together to get us through whatever humps we're facing and to be greater.
All right, appreciate it. And your answer actually, we have two remaining questions, which your answer even previewed a bit. One question on government transparency, the latter on what you spoke to about us being in the, trying to get information in the context of COVID-19. First, the question about transparency. Can you talk about how your administration, what openness, sharing, and receiving data that's needed or by the public, what that could look like in your administration?
Well, I think that, I had a boss for many years. Every transaction we did, the clients were called and they were asked a series of questions. And if you didn't get it right, when you showed up at work, it would be on your desk, highlighted, and you had to answer for it. So I would say that, that I've worked in that transparent environment for years. I worked for BMW, the company, and I worked for Sonic Automotive. So we had microscopes on us at every second. I know people think the car business is one way, but it is really not. It is a very scrutinized, honest, straightforward operation. At least if you're working for BMW and you're working for a Fortune 200 company, I mean, they were listed on the New York Stock Exchange. There were people over us all the time watching over our shoulders. So absolutely, it has to be open. I think today that we just have a churning in our gut that we can never trust government. Whatever they tell us, we're not sure we can believe it. So you can count that I will open the doors, open everything up, and we will be transparent as we possibly can. Now, there may be some things in there that have to be, maybe not discussed openly, and I don't know what that would be, but, maybe things involving police investigations and things like that that just couldn't be straight up opened up. But you'll find me to be transparent and also available. I think that I'm a roll your sleeves up kind of guy and get out in the workforce and so I'll be out there with you working every day.
Heard. The final question, you spoke to the challenge of, even when it comes to getting the information from on what's going on in government and not being able to really meet with people like we usually do due to COVID-19. When it comes to our city's response to COVID-19 recovery, how do you imagine possibly integrating the arts into that?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that what we'll find is that this thing's going to be quickly behind us. In 100 days, hopefully we won't be talking about COVID. I talked to one of my best friends today. He's got both his shots. He had been on quarantine for 10 days because he thought he had run across somebody with it. So he was so happy to get out today. But I think it's going to be in our rear view mirror quickly. And we're going to go back to our wonderful, vibrant city that we know and love. And in a short time, and I'll work to see that the resources of the city are there to ensure that it's a rapid return to that.
Truly look forward to that.
Amen.
Robert, thank you very much for your time. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it back over to Monica.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Josiah. Thank you, Robert. I think too, in that last question, the response to COVID, one thing I want recovery of COVID is what I'm trying to say. One thing I want to remind everyone is that the arts heal, and there's going to be a lot of mental health needs that we're going to need to address. There's going to be a lot of PTSD from COVID, but as well as our small businesses and our nonprofits that we're going to need, that the arts can be integrated in helping in this recovery. I just have a few more questions that were submitted during this talk, Robert, and we'll let you go because we know you're busy. The next question that we have that was submitted is, what will you do to expand the footprint of the performing art forms in our communities?
You know, I don't know that I have a prepared canned answer for that. What is the mayor's responsibility to that, and what has it been able to do in the past? I would certainly spend some time researching that and studying it. I'll be honest with you, I've been studying our mayors from way back when, reading about them and finding about their initiatives and what they were able to accomplish. So for me to share with you today exactly what that would look like, I don't know. I don't have a canned answer for that.
That's okay. We don't want a canned answer. We want transparency. So we appreciate that. And we can connect you to any arts organizations that you'd like to learn more or work with and volunteer with. Also, we can connect you to some of our City Hall folks if you need some assistance with that, and any open data requests. We'll happily help you with that. Next question we have is, you mentioned properties when we were talking about the American dream, and we were talking about, you know, affordable housing, free housing, and so on. And you had mentioned previously that you didn't feel like, you know, free housing was the American dream, but helping folks to get to afford the American dream, correct? And that there is some, you own some properties that you, within one particular underserved community in particular. Do you or have you ever allowed those with criminal backgrounds to rent from you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I started this thing maybe 13, 15 years ago. So it was very unsophisticated at the beginning. I was just excited. You know, I bought my first property. I worked on it a year. And actually one of my mentors said, quit polishing on it and get it rented. So, you know, back when I started my apprenticeship as a pipe fitter welder, I had an ad ran in the Quality Shopper, and I would do work on the side. So a guy that took me under his wing, I won't name his name, but we were down working on one of his properties one day, and a guy come walking up. I mean, he really was a slumlord back in the day of those old shotgun houses. The guy comes walking up, and he rented him the house and never, I mean, he took his money and shook his hand. The guy went in. I was like, how are you going to keep up with that? You know, so it was a very unsophisticated operation at the very beginning. So as I went along, you know, you become better at, you know, checking records and things like that. But, you know, I really don't do background checks on my people. It's a very small operation I have. So, you know, I think that, you know, I was in East Chattanooga knocking on doors the other day, and I stopped at the convenience store, and a guy grabbed me because I had my Elect Me shirt on, and that's why I'm wearing it, to talk to people. And he had paperwork with him, or he grabbed it out of his car and explained to me that he had $4,800 worth of back fees and taxes and fines, and that he hadn't been in trouble in 20 years, but he couldn't rent a house because of this background record. So, you know, only thing I offered to him was encouragement that he gets his stimulus check, go pay it down on it, and start paying, you know, $10 or $15 a week on it till it's paid off. Right.
Well, I think that was nice of you to give advice. And I think also, you know, once you file the paperwork and you put on the shirt, you're going to get all those questions, you know, from all the constituents. Yeah.
Hey, that's why I was there, to try to understand and find out what I can do to help.
We have one final question for you, sir. Let's see. Why should the people who make up the local arts and culture sector vote for you?
Well, the same reason anybody should vote for me. I'm a common man, and you'll find me, you know, my 3 or 4 or 5 or 15 things that are really on the list. But one is to create a vocational training center that will truly allow high school graduates to come out and be able to go get a job and provide themselves. I will secure our neighborhoods through more training and more diversity in the police force. My goal will to remind us of the old days when the police were considered peace officers. You know, they're not just there to enforce, they're there to maintain the peace. And I think that we need to work. Part of what has to be done to do that, and I've got some officers that are sharing with me information, is to create a better retention program so that the officers live and work in their communities that they serve. And then my goal initially will be to unite the 3,000 city employees around a common goal to work toward making this the best city it can be. And it's amazing how people I've reached out to, Public Works Department, everybody's kind of on board with working together to make the city better. I will continue to showcase our attributes to potential industries and cut fat while demanding efficiency. I have no plans to increase taxes, but rather focus on cost cutting. And I think that the administrators and the leaders are already in place and they know where the fat is and it's got to be trimmed. So if we can trim down some of these commissions, we can create a more efficient city, which only attracts, people into it, and that will only attract people into the arts.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate this morning, our candidates and our moderators, but also our attendees. Thank you to Arts Build. I would like to remind everyone that we just, as we get closer to Election Day, we continue these events, and we've whittled down the list of our mayoral candidates, and we have one more on Friday with candidate Lon Cartwright at 10 a.m. Josiah, do you have any announcements that you'd like to share with everyone before we say goodbye?
Wear masks, stay distant until we get to hug each other again.
That's right. So everybody stay safe. Yeah, because honestly, the more we get out of this, I appreciate your hope, Mr. Wilson, and I appreciate your positivity and saying that we're, 100 days, hopefully we'll be out of this. We all want that because we want people back supporting the arts and attending shows and workshops and learning more with our culture. So I really appreciate all that you've said. Amy, do you have any announcements for Arts Build?
No, just a thank you to both Josiah and Mr. Wilson for being here with us today and sharing your time with us.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson, do you have any announcements? Any other forums?
No, just a simple thank you. I think I would say that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's what I focused on in my career. So all together, we'll all be better.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day. Get outside today. It's like 70 something. Get some vitamin D. We all need it. So please do that. All right. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.